Joining me now is Michael Cohen. He's a former personal attorney to Donald Trump. He's the author of the books Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the Department of Justice Against His Critics, and Disloyal, a memoir. Michael is also host of the podcast Mea Culpa with Michael Cohen and Political Beatdown. And I was on with Michael. Michael, you were the first person I had a full, long, 1-hour conversation with on Friday morning after the debate. And it was a frank and amazing conversation, and I'd like to replicate some of it for our viewers with a little less swearing. But you made this point very clearly. You said all the things I just said. Yeah, it was a disappointing debate. There's no question. But Donald Trump said one thing that was true in that debate. He said one thing that was not a lie in that debate, and I think it was when he said what his name was. This has got to be focused on who Donald Trump is and the threat that he poses to this country.
Yeah, look, I said to you, and I'll say it to your audience as well. In Donald's world of lies and deceit, it's the way I saw the debate. Joe Biden is a beacon of truth. Now, the following day in North Carolina, you heard Joe Biden give this the energy that we were hoping that we were going to see during the debate. And he came out and he said, I'm not a young man. And the crowd went wild because it's true, chanting Joe, Joe, Joe. And he says, I don't walk the way I used to. I don't speak the way that I used to. And I don't debate the way that I used to. And again, the crowd went wild for it. You know, look, there's such a contrast between these two individuals. You know, I also want to tell you, Ali, this morning I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about the debate and Joe Biden looking very tired, which is what he looked. Something that I think the American people really need to remember here is that while Trump, during the day of the debate, was contemplating on what he was going to eat for breakfast or, you know, which golf course he wanted to play golf at that day, Joe Biden was still running the country and he was tired. And this thing, started at 9 p.m. at night. And so, yeah, I get it. He's 80, I get it. He was tired. Probably they should have done it earlier, right? But 9 o'clock was late, or maybe they should have given him some downtime because right now, as you know, the world is a little chaotic and he is still the CEO of the United States of America. On top of that, we're also, as the citizens that will be electing who the next president is, think about this as, would you get rid of your stock because you had a bad quarter with the CEO? Would you ask the CEO to step down because you have a bad quarter or half year, 2 quarters, or even a full year? And I think the answer to that is no. So this sort of overexuberance by the populace, especially Democrats, automatically asking for Joe Biden to step down. I think you have to look at what he has accomplished in the 3.5 years that he's been president and say, if he is the president and he would be running against Donald Trump, who's clearly the right choice to take us from 2024 to 2028? And that's an easy answer. It's Biden-Harris.
You had said, and maybe I'll just make this offer out there right now, that in preparation for the next debate, they had some very good people, Bob Bauer, Ron Klain, helping the president prepare. You offered your services when you and I were talking the other day, and I think I should put it out there because when I mentioned that to a few people, they said, it's not a bad idea. Maybe they should have Michael Cohen in there because you felt that there were, and Joe Biden doesn't talk like you do, but you felt that there were some opportunities for Joe Biden not simply to prove that he's a good president or he's been a good president or that he's got the public interest in mind, but to remind people exactly of who Donald Trump is. What would you suggest? Putting aside the energy and the tiredness stuff, what would you suggest Joe Biden does in the next debate to remind people and more importantly, put Donald Trump, on the defensive?
Yeah, so from the very first question, what I would have done is I would have come at Donald Trump with facts, something, of course, Donald Trump knows nothing about. There was no, there wasn't even a minutia of facts in anything that Trump says. He spews all sorts of nonsense. And what you need to do is constantly remind the viewer that what Donald Trump is saying is a lie. that it is inaccurate, that it only exists between his ears in that space called Trump land and his MAGA supporters. It's just not true. And you need to, of course, from the very, very first question, you wanted to come out and you want to remind exactly the way you and so many other moderators or, journalists describe Donald Trump, the twice impeached. I am running against a twice impeached, 4-time indicted criminal felon on 34 counts of fraud who's bankrupted his company 7 times. It's also not just what you say, it's also how you say it. There's a specific way that you have to say things to Donald Trump in order to get under his skin. And that's what Joe Biden needed to do. In this debate, he allowed Donald to get very comfortable. In fact, they didn't talk about the 34 criminal convictions until minute 45 of the 90-minute debate. I would have, right out of the rip, I would have come straight out and I would have started to talk about his criminal convictions. I would have talked about all of the things that 35,000 lies that this man, my opponent, has told you, the American people, from COVID to Roe v. Wade to, climate change and everything in between. This man has lied to you, the American public, 35,000 times. You will not hear a single thing of truth emanating from this man's hole underneath his nose. You will not hear a single truth during this entire debate. And I want you to remember that when he's answering these questions. You come out and you swing hard.
Michael, thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. Michael Cohen is a former personal attorney to Donald Trump. He's the author of Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the Department of Justice Against His Critics, and Disloyal, a memoir. He's the host of the Mea Culpa podcast with Michael Cohen.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.